All right, everybody. I'm muted now. Okay, you can hear me. Cool. All right, let's go ahead and get off that music. Welcome, everybody, to another exciting episode of the Crowdsourced Politics News Roundup. I'm the host and moderator of the Crowdsourced Politics podcast, Cypher, and today we have a lot of things that we need to cover because we've been off the air for about 2 weeks and there's been a lot of development in the news since then. Before we get into the news roundup, let me explain a little bit about Crowdsourced Politics. Crowdsourced Politics is a podcast born out of a funky little debate community where we try to tamp down on vitriol and practice praxis. And we do the news roundup every Thursday from about 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to about 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, covering the news that was of the last week with the kind of analysis only the crowd can provide. We are going to permanently make this show a news roundup without other guests. The reason that we're going to do that is because there's been so much stuff in the news in the last few weeks and everything like that, and it's been hard to get a bunch of people onto the cast and on the same page, not necessarily with the same opinions, but with the same requisite knowledge to talk about the different topics that we want to cover. And we've been a little lacking on our own end, being able to keep up with the news docs in a timely manner to provide people that prerequisite knowledge through our drafts. So we're going to end this show is now going to be just me solo for now on. However, we will be doing other shows for conversations and practicing different kinds of debate tactics and covering different topics, like a lot of the other podcasters and news people that are on Twitch politics and YouTube politics, with our own kind of brand and flavoring that you have come to know and love. With that said, we do a regular... Oh, I got frozen. My camera crashed. Great. So this has not been a problem until I got a new phone. That's really bad place to freeze. Let's see. Happened right when I started. Sorry, everybody, for the technical difficulties. I'll be right back while I try to fix this. Okay, my guess is the reason why this is happening, just to keep you all informed, is that when I changed my phone over, I transferred all my data to it as well, and it's messing with the program. So that's probably why it's happening. Anyways, we're back now. Sorry about the technical difficulty. But as I was saying, so the news roundup will be just me going forward, and we will have another program to do a debate and discussion format, kind of like how other people on the political scene, the pundit political scene from Twitch and YouTube are doing it as well. And so stay tuned to that. Another thing that we want to announce today is that we will be doing another charity stream. This time it will be for only probably about 12 hours, because last time I did it 24 hours, I super crashed and I couldn't, it was too much. I'm too old for that shit now. So we will be doing that on December 18th, time to be determined, but it will be probably from like 11 to 11, but I'm still working out details with other guests and those kind of things in order to give you the kind of analysis and everything that is crowdsourced. So pay attention, stay tuned for that. We will be raising money for a charity that deals with refugee resettlement. And at the very least, we're still working on in the background for what charities will be raising money for, but that is definitely one of the kinds of charities we'll be raising money for. So it's going to be for a good cause, and any money that we get in addition to the donations that you will be donating, we will also be donating the vast majority of that money that comes our way. So pay attention again to that, and it's going to be a good time. Thanks for the follow. Armad Dude Relu, butchered your name, I'm sorry, but thank you. And so, yeah, another thing that we like to do with the Crowdsourced Politics podcast is a podcast called Cipher State. Cipher State is a foreign affairs and foreign policy focused podcast where we go kind of in depth into a particular topic that is affecting the global geopolitical stage. Our last episode was called Taliban Land, where you can find that on YouTube. And me and my friend Tiberius D discuss what has happened with Afghanistan since the pullout. And so you can find that on YouTube, and the audio version of that on the podcast streaming service, wherever you get your podcast at, will be up shortly, probably by like Tuesday or so. So pay attention to that as well. All right. So let's go ahead and get started with the news. Welcome back, everybody. So at the top of the news, we're going to be talking about the continuing resolution in order to fund the government for at least the next 3 months. The continuing resolution, or CR, must be passed by both the House and the Senate and signed by the president by midnight tomorrow in order to prevent a government shutdown. According to Vox, every year, a set of 12 appropriation bills funds federal agencies through the end of September, meaning lawmakers need to pass new legislation by October in order to make sure the government doesn't run out of money. The reason it is October is because the government's fiscal year is from October to October, from October to the end of September. So if the government runs out of money, quote unquote, agencies are forced to furlough employees and reduce their services. Now, the government by and large can't actually run out of money, but because of legal things, it runs out of money. This year, as in past years, Congress passed a CR in September that funds the government at existing spending levels until early December. The CR, however, doesn't resolve the deeper differences that Republicans and Democrats have over the bills, which they likely have to revisit again in January. When Democrats can pass the full year funding bills by themselves in the House, they need the support of at least 10 GOP lawmakers in the Senate, and the support has been elusive. The reason being is because of the Senate filibuster. There are still many disagreements on the larger bills. Republicans have pushed for stripping spending on programs like the Clean Technology and Green Climate Funds out of the full year bill, while Democrats have prioritized giving a boost to provisions including public health, infrastructure, and affordable housing. Republicans have pushed back against the policy changes Democrats would like to make that take our provisions like the Hyde Amendment. The Hyde, which has barred the use of federal funds for many abortions and has been hitched to appropriation bills in the past. Democrat and Republican disagreements over the funding bills are about substance and timing. Republicans have a swath of demands related to the contents of the spending bills, including removal of funding for provisions like the Civilian Climate Corps and the reinstatement of money for a border wall, which Democrats are reallocating. Democrats, meanwhile, are eager to keep many of these provisions and have proposed using the appropriations bill to give a 13% boost to domestic foreign aid spending. One way certain Republicans have suggested gutting Democratic priorities is by passing a longer-term continuing resolution, which would freeze spending levels for different programs at those set by the Trump administration. In the past, Congress has typically passed a short-term spending bill to keep the government running for a few weeks or months until lawmakers are able to agree on the full legislation. By pushing for appropriations to stay at the same level, Republicans hope to curb any spending changes Democrats have proposed and restrict their ability to boost appropriations to implement their agenda. Democrats, meanwhile, have argued that funding the federal government at existing levels for the whole year would have detrimental consequences for many programs. Quote, "An endless cycle of continuing resolutions is not a responsible way to govern," Senate Appropriation Chair Patrick Leahy said in a statement earlier this year. Quote, "It means cuts to veterans, cuts to national security and defense, handcuffing our response to the pandemic, and not meeting the challenges of climate change." As Leahy alluded to, keeping funding levels at the same as last year would mean that the government is less responsive to new needs that have emerged as the pandemic has continued, and that services that combat violence against women and support childcare would have less funding than Democrats would like. Now, as of breaking news earlier today, the House has actually passed the continuing resolution to fund the government until February 18th, joining the Senate's passage of the bill earlier this morning. The House has passed a continuing resolution to fund the government through February 18th as congressional negotiators face the threat of a shutdown Friday at midnight because Republican senators are objecting to Biden's vaccine mandate. The final vote was 221 to 212. GOP Representative Adam Kinzinger was the only Republican to join Democrats in voting for the resolution. The resolution will now go to the Senate, where the shutdown threat remains. Key negotiators from both parties announced a plan Thursday morning that would prevent a lapse in funding, but due to Senate rules governing procedure, all 100 senators would need to agree in order to quickly pass the plan before Friday, while a handful of GOP senators are standing by their threats to delay the process over vaccine rules. Here's some additional context. A group of Senate Republicans has repeatedly threatened throughout the week to delay the passage of the continuing resolution over the Biden administration's rule that requires employers with 100 or more employees to ensure their employees are fully vaccinated against COVID-19 or undergo regular testing and wear face masks in the workplace. While lawmakers are confident that they can ultimately prevent a prolonged shutdown, a brief shutdown over the weekend or extending into next week remains a broad possibility. Now, in addition to what we just said here, as what was usually seems to be happening in these cases as of late, is that Senator Joe Manchin seems to be backing Republicans once again in their efforts to curb federal spending. Now, in this case, Joe Manchin has said, and according to WOPO, an interview he conducted, or not an interview, according to WOPO, this is a direct quote, "I've been very supportive of a mandate for federal government, for military, for all the people who work on the government payroll. However, I've been less enthused about it in the private sector, so we're working through all that." Now, Manchin in the past has supported the government's vaccine mandate. This, to me, appears to be another effort in order to curb Democratic spending due to unnecessary fears about inflation, which we covered right before we went on Thanksgiving break with the actual reasons for inflation. So go ahead and check that episode out. Now, of course, in the Senate, it's the usual suspects. We have Marshall and Senator Ted Cruz on Thursday saying that they're going to hold up the bill unless this vaccine mandate is included. This anti-vaccine mandate measure, rather, is included. And they're trying to use the leverage of threatening to shut down the federal government, putting not only America's, the government's credit at risk, but also average day Americans also at risk from the ability to meet their needs. When the government shuts down, it isn't just a shutdown for, federal employees, right? There are certain mechanisms in place that require people to be at work to provide services that everyday Americans need. This can include things such as Social Security. It can include things such as military personnel not being paid. Now, the last time that this happened, back in, what was it? I think it was 28. No, I was still in the military. So the last time this happened, and it was a prolonged one, I was still in the military. So I think it was probably 2014 or so. They carved out an exception for military servicemen. They had to pass a separate bill, and it overwhelmingly passed, right? Because no one wants to be like, we didn't support the troops. And give us, I've freaking crashed again. My God. What the fuck? This is upsetting to me. And I think it might be because my phone is not charged. Yeah. I'm sorry, everybody. This is... Oh, there he goes again. All right. And... Oh. All right. Well... I know, it's stopped at a very bad place. Come on. Yeah, at least my eyes are closed. So weird. There it goes. All right. So, no. Check to see if the app is open already. It's not open. I did not have this problem until I upgraded my phone. I have to do it over Wi-Fi. I'll do it over Wi-Fi, but I don't think that's the problem. All right. Oh, look, you get to see my room. Oh, look at that. Yeah, no, I'm upside down. I have to... All right, I'm back. Anyways, as I was saying, this is another issue of Joe Manchin trying to stop it. And when it's happened, guerrilla podcasting. Yes, guerrilla podcasting is correct. But the last time this happened, the Republicans and Democrats came together and made an exception for military personnel so they would still get paid while deployed or what have you. And this is a thing that might happen again. We'll see. Now, another thing that we should understand with this is that the continuing resolution, the giving enough money for the federal government to continue to operate, like the debt ceiling or anything else, is kind of a created fiction based off of political posturing that has existed in American politics since forever, basically. And it's not a thing that actually happens very much in other countries. This is kind of a thing that's pretty unique to American politics because nobody likes giving their political opponents a win, and we're more bifurcated when it comes to political parties than the pretty much the rest of the world. And so this is one of those situations where I think they being politicians, us as being Americans, need to have passed to take away the power of the legislature to play these fuck games with shutting down the government. Have all the budgetary fights that you want about, what needs to go into the budget. I don't care about that, but you shouldn't shut down the government over it. Different services need to be provided at all times, and those need to be completely protected from this. And so that maybe some discretionary spending here or there, maybe you have the people's payrolls and stuff still handled. And so there might be some freezes that maybe other people can play around with there, but it won't be as difficult on the American populace if this were to happen. And so that's what I think needs to happen. But you can tell me your thoughts. Also, with that, let's go ahead and, you know what? Oh, wait, I need to do it this way. Why don't you hit that like button while you're at it? If you're watching on YouTube or going to the YouTube later, please go ahead and smash that like button for the algorithms. It really does help us out. See, and it's a really good thing for us. It helps us out a lot, and it shows us that, you care. So please go ahead and smash that like button. Now, moving on. So there is more things that are happening with this. As always, we're going to keep talking about the social infrastructure bill, the Build Back Better bill, until cows come home, or until it's obviously not going to pass. Now, it is likely not going to pass now. The progressives lost all their leverage in the fight for it, but it is something that can still happen as of right now. So on the heels of the successful passage of the historic infrastructure bill last month, the House passed the Build Back Better bill, a landmark piece of legislation in Biden's agenda. House Democrats alone passed $2.2 trillion in spending over the next decade to expand social safety net and address climate change. There were no Republican votes. Now, another quirk of this reporting, this is something that everybody does, the federal government does, the CBO does, news analysts do, and us as well, because of how the federal government reports it, is that it's reported over 10 years. $2.2 trillion over 10 years sounds like a lot. If you say $2.2 trillion, that's a lot of money, right? But if you actually divide it every year if you actually find out on the year basis, this is about $220 billion, which for the federal government on a yearly basis isn't much money. The U.S. economy generates roughly about $30 trillion a year in GDP. So if we're trying to actually put this in perspective, you have $2.2 trillion versus $390 trillion over the same period. So it's really not that much money when you look at it. That's one thing. But let's go ahead and continue on. The bill's passage, voted by all but one Democrat, came after weeks of cajoling and arm twisting. It was capped off by an exhausting and record-breaking speech of more than 8 hours by House Republican Representative Kevin McCarthy of California that pushed a planned Thursday vote past midnight, then delayed it to Friday morning, but did nothing to dent Democratic unity. Now, this is the House version of a filibuster. They can't just continuously not have a vote. You can overrule them with a simple majority, but they can do these kind of things where they take up a bunch of time and try to delay it as much as they can. Even pared back from the $3.5 trillion plan that Mr. Biden originally sought, legislation could prove as transformative as any since the Great Society and War on Poverty in the 1960s, especially for young Americans and young families and older Americans. The Congressional Budget Office published an official cost estimate on Thursday that found the package would increase the federal budget deficit by $160 billion over 10 years, or $16 billion a year. Again, this is nothing. These are pennies to the federal government. Okay, I crashed again. I don't know what's going on. I'm going to try plugging it in. Hopefully that's playing Bon Jovi in the background while watching this was a good idea. All right. Love you too, North Countryman. Appreciate it. Sorry about the technical difficulties. I'll have to figure this out later, but we'll continue on. Now, continuing on. So it was Mr. McCarthy, the top Republican in the House, who made a futile last stand against the measure in the chamber, taking advantage of what is known as a magic minute, a custom that allows party members to speak without time constraints when they are granted their minute on the floor time. He held the floor well into Friday morning, railing for more than 8 hours against the bill and the Biden administration, breaking the record for the longest continuous House speech in modern history, set by Ms. Pelosi in 2018 before he concluded at 5:10 a.m. Some Democrats pointedly walked out before he began his speech, and at times interrupted his speech against the bill with boos, heckles, and jeers. But just hours later, Democrats filled the chamber, joking about the lack of sleep and ready to vote. If Democrats feared the political consequences, it was not evident from the final tally, which reflected support among Democratic representatives from the most competitive districts. As the vote tally ticked past 218, Democrats began hugging and dancing in the aisles of the House chambers, chanting, "Build Back Better." Once Ms. Pelosi banged the gavel to signal the end of the vote, lawmakers swarmed her on the House floor, yelling her name and cheering as Republicans sat expressionless across the room. The vote showed remarkable Democratic unity, given the struggle to get it passed. Now, the legislation, one of the most consequential pieces of legislation in half a century, is now in negotiation in the Senate. A few days after the bill's passage in the House, CNN reported that Senator Leader Chuck Schumer said the Democrats are in very good shape to get 50 votes, but that he knows Republicans will look for ways to try to knock it out. The leader said his party would like to finish the bill with the insulin provisions in it by Christmas. Meanwhile, Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, another Democrat from New York, said on Sunday that she was still optimistic Manchin will eventually support paid family and medical leave in the Senate version of the plan, a proposal he has repeatedly opposed. Quote, "I think Senator Manchin and I came together, hopefully in the next couple of weeks, on something that could be included in this package," she said. "I'm hopeful that if I can use the next 3 weeks to really impress upon Senator Manchin that some things can only be done with Democrats, only that now is the only time to do that, perhaps in the next decade." One of Senator Manchin's primary issues with the bill is the cost, especially as it relates to inflation. Now, we covered on this program previously all the reasons why inflation is the way that it is right now. It's a lot to do with the supply chain shortages, labor shortages, etc., and trying to jumpstart an entire global economy after being shut down for almost a year. And there's other games being played by OPEC trying to recoup losses from the previous year and that sort of thing. One of the things that is most telling about this is that global output of oil and natural gas, fossil fuels, etc., is still below pre-pandemic levels. Now, it has increased since 2020, but it has not returned to its 2019 numbers. In order for us to meet demand with the global population increasing, it needs to be beyond the 2019 numbers in order to actually tamp down on this type of inflation. So this is why some of the things that President Biden did in the last 2 weeks, most notably tapping the strategic oil reserve, had a noticeable impact on gasoline prices pretty much right away. I'm in Texas, so we've always had pretty cheap gas because it doesn't have to travel anywhere, basically. We just get it. So it's been like about 20, maybe 30 cents lower than a lot of places in the United States. And when he said he was tapping the strategic oil reserve, gas went from about $3.05 here in Austin, Texas, to $2.90 on average. And so this is one of those situations where you can clearly see it's a demand supply issue. It's not just inflation. It's not the fact that there's more money in circulation. It's the fact that there isn't enough supply. So let's continue on with this. When President Joe Biden first developed the Build Back Better plan, actually, let me make sure I'm not missing any. Okay, cool. Pelosi did her speed in like 4-inch heels too. Oh yeah, she did her speech. Yeah, thanks, Sham Glint. That's correct. All right, continuing on. So, when President Joe Biden first developed the Build Back Better plan during his 2020 campaign for president, inflation wasn't on the minds of many Americans. Now it is a top concern. October saw a spike in consumer prices of 6.2% compared to the previous year. And polls show voters are obsessed with the issue as economists fear surging prices will continue well into 2022, if not longer. Those concerns over inflation come as the Senate hopes to vote soon on the $2.2 trillion Build Back Better spending package. It should be noted that inflation is kind of also hitting a pent-up demand situation here, where we had deflation in 2020, and now we have basically a return to kind of normal inflation. So some of that is caused by that as well. This bill has wide-reaching goals to increase healthcare coverage, boost social programs like universal pre-kindergarten and housing subsidies, and tackle climate change. Despite claims from some Democrats, the bill is likely to put downward pressure on inflation, says Mark Goodwin, an economist and senior policy director at the Committee for Responsible Federal Budget. The effect is not likely to be large. However, he added, bottom line, it's likely going to boost inflation in the first few years relative to where it would otherwise be, because you are putting more money into the hands of regular Americans. Inflation, if there's more money in the hands of regular Americans, that's more money that's going to circulate in the economy for whatever reason it is, and you're just going to have people spending more because poor people spend money. Now, the CRFB calculates that the Build Back Better bill is largely paid for as it is currently written, adding only $160 billion to national debt over 10 years. Now, the reason that it'll have any inflation is, again, because of the fact that more Americans will have more spending money. Because the bill is pretty much paid for, according to the CBO, it's not because we're just injecting money into the economy. It's because money is being rerouted from the top 1% to the bottom 99%. Very important distinction. You get a lot of bang for your buck when you end up doing things like this. Now, but the bill is front-loaded with more spending in the first 5 years and more savings between years 5 and 10. The bill will add about $750 billion in debt over its first 5 years before it largely evens out, according to Goldwyn's group. The easiest way to address that is don't add $750 billion to deficit in the first 5 years. I'm not saying it's going to be exactly budget neutral every year, but closer to the budget neutral in the first 5 years is going to make it less inflationary by definition. So if you don't front load the money, you spread it out a bit more, you're going to have less inflationary pressure. Now, this is important to note as well. The reason it is being brought to the first 5 years is because we want to prevent Republicans from playing fuck games with the budget. When Obamacare passed in 2010, they had a lot of the money promised to different groups happen in 2014. Republicans took control back of the House in 2010, and then in the Senate in 2012, they were able, or 2014, and they were able to whittle away the amount of money being given to different programs that was designed to keep the price of insurance low, thus being able to get their way, even though that they had lost the battle. So they lost the battle and they're able to get their way because the war went on, right? And so if you front load it, if you put it in the first 2 years of it, then they can't mess with the budget because you're still in power. That is why it's being front loaded. So these political considerations, having those political considerations in mind, definitely puts this into some perspective. Now the goal of spreading it out a bit more is to ease inflationary pressures in 2022. After that, those inflationary pressures will hopefully ease as supply chain problems lessen, the pandemic subsides, and the Federal Reserve takes action to ease inflation. the actions that they can take is largely around controlling interest rates, charging a bit more interest rates for the money they loan out, and thus cascading to increased interest rates to average people. Because no one wants to eat a loss. That's another reason why we have inflation right now. Like, okay, I need to say this. This is a little bit off topic, right? So it's a little bit off topic, but inflation is high. Profits have the amount of profits for major corporations, even though inflation is very high, is 39%. It's gone up 39%. So they're not eating the cost of inflation at all. Remember that. Now, NPR reported the last time the Democratic Party created new... Oh, look, I already talked about this. So I'm going to go ahead and scroll this down. So as I was saying about the Affordable Care Act, so what was I saying? Let me get this bit because I wasn't... I got ahead of myself when talking about this. So here he goes. So, quote, when somebody sees the road in front of their home improve, that they're not blowing out their tires or their front end alignment on potholes, when they know that their bridge they've been crossing is going to be safe, Carney said. Those kinds of peace of mind issues are very important to people's everyday. The second component of okay, let me go back to this. Okay. Learn the lessons. So the Democrats learned the lessons of the Affordable Care Act in 2010. So we're going to continue on from here. Sorry about getting ahead of myself a little bit. But more importantly, they say that it's also time to communicate how the federal budget will improve people's lives in tangible ways. Chris Carney, a Democrat who represented a red district in Pennsylvania and lost his seat, thinks this time is different. Lost his seat partly due to the Affordable Care Act. He said when it comes to voting for the Biden agenda, now he told NPR, it's an easy yes. He said back then Obamacare wasn't explained well. He said Democrats allowed the opposition to get out in front of the argument and left them on the defensive. But when it comes to what Congress has been working on these past few months, Carney said that the benefits will be easier to explain. Take the first part of the agenda, the bipartisan infrastructure bill that will fix potholes and make tunnels and bridges safer will be easy to identify in many communities. As previously said, these are things that people see in real-time improvement, and they're like, oh yeah, the government is doing something for me. Now, the second component, passed in the House last month, is expected to change in the Senate. Almost all Democrats in both chambers agree on one thing. Getting it over the finish line by the end of the year is critical to their political fortunes in 2022. Representative Stephanie Murphy, Democrat from Florida, voted for both the infrastructure bill and the Build Back Better bills. Still, she warned her party about trying to roll out too many new policies at once. I thought we should pick a few things that mattered to a lot of our constituents and do them well and do them in a sustainable and lasting way, Murphy explained. She said that the fights inside the party have also complicated getting the message out. It makes it difficult to communicate when there is a Democrat on Democrat attacks. But Murphy was quick to point out that some pieces of the broader bill are already resonating with voters back home. Quote, I think that my constituents in Florida clearly understand the impact of climate change and the need to take action on that. Unlike Carney, who lost in 2010, Representative Kurt Schrader, Democrat of Oregon, voted for the ACA and survived that wave election. But he is a top-tier GOP target in 2022 and expects Republicans to nationalize the election once again. He said that he planned to talk about his role getting specific things in the bill. Quote, I'm going to run on the prescription program that I negotiated. I'm going to run on the bipartisan infrastructure package, and that I started with my problem solver group. I think those are winning messages, but you got to have the resources to take your message out, Shader said last week. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi maintains that the situation in 2010 and the environment going into 2022 are vastly different, pointing to the fact that Biden has already been on the road touting the agenda's impact in several states. There's no substitute for the bully pulpit of the President of the United States, Pelosi said last week. The House Democrats' campaign arm is pushing over 1,000 events across the country. Kirsten Hahn, a Democrat strategist and partner at ROKK Solutions, worked for the moderate Blue Dog Coalition in 2010 and told NPR that explaining the component parts of the Build Back Better plan as soon as possible is the way Democrats move beyond the messy process talk that has dominated the last few months. Quote, "We'll always say that the second that you get into having to explain what you're doing, you're losing the messaging battle already. That's the difficult part about legislation." Carney said that unlike Obamacare, the Build Back Better bill can be a potent political weapon because Democrats can show concrete ways they are changing people's lives for the better. "I would go on the offensive with this. I would ask everybody who voted against it why," Carney said. The messaging war over the Build Back Better plan is in full swing with the GOP campaign committees and its allies working to define it as, quote, socialist spending spree to voters. The president's low standing in the polls and the historic trend of the party in power losing seats in midterms could mean this push in Democrats' last chance to enact major public policies for a while. Hahn said the dip in approval rating is a motivating factor to get the full agenda through before the end of the year. Quote, "The president is at the top of the ticket, and his numbers need to come up in order for those candidates in the House to be successful in the re-election campaign on or their elections. Democrats on Capitol Hill believe the Build Back Better agenda can also turn into a political plus, and some argue it already has with things that help people now, like the child tax credit." Now, the child tax credit is super important. The child tax credit allows people with children to maybe spend more time with their children. Now, it's not a lot of money, okay? It's roughly $300 per child up to the ages of like 16, and it goes down a little bit. There's a little bit more. Oh, Universal Discourse. Thank you for the raid of 3 people. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Hopefully that was big enough for people to see, but I got a little Trump dancing because we like to crowdsource. Anyways, Universal Discourse, thank you so much for bringing in those people. Greatly appreciate it. And welcome to the podcast of the Crowdsourced Politics News Roundup, everybody. Hope you enjoy. Let's get some comments in here. So let's see. Sham Glint said, "My sociology professor cried during class because of how happy she was about the child tax credit. Shit's so dope." It really is. Now, is your, I want to ask, do you know if your college professor is adjunct or tenured? It matters because adjunct professors typically make less money, and that's going to have a major impact on their ability to raise their family. And so it'd be interesting to know if she is adjunct or not. Oh, why aren't you updating? Hey, thank you for the follow, Coffee Table. Appreciate it. But yes, so that the child tax credit is huge. It really is. It should be one of those things that probably is made permanent, because the child tax credit as it existed prior to COVID was kind of this like refundable tax credit. And it basically made, not refundable, it was a tax credit, but it was at the end of the year. With making it a slightly larger tax credit and making it a prebate, you're putting money into the hands of Americans' pockets right then and there. And it is huge. $300 a month for somebody that's poor could be the difference between keeping the lights on or not. As sad as that is, it is very true. To be honest, I don't know what that means. I'm in a community college. She also teaches at the state university. I'm not sure. Probably adjunct then. So the difference between adjunct and tenured professor, just for your information, is that an adjunct professor is typically not tenured, and they typically make less money. They're either they just haven't gone through the process of getting that tenured position, which can be like 5-6 years plus multiple publications, etc. And they're treated like shit. Honestly, they really are. So yeah. Also, she was happy for the effects it would have for others. Yeah. Okay. Fair point. Thank you. I feel like my chat isn't showing. Is it not? Oh, it's not showing up. There we go. Oh, look at that. There's the chat now. You guys can see the chat. So, but yeah. So the Build Back Better child tax credit, making that permanent would be huge boon to everything. And it's something that some Republicans have supported in the past. Now, what have they supported in the past? Well, they've supported that like Joe Manchin. Oh, okay. Would that make it likely she's... I couldn't say for sure, but that's probably more than assistant head. I think that's probably higher up than the other, so yeah. Yeah, she's probably tenured then if she's an assistant head. Thank you for the information. I appreciate it. So yeah, the 300 is huge. Means the difference between having the lights turned off or not. Might be the difference between a vacation. It might be the difference between having two people working out of the home and leaving their kids to not necessarily fend for themselves, but less time with their parents, and having a person be at home because they don't need that second income anymore. So it's huge, and it's something that should be more pushed more by everybody than what is currently done. So yeah, I think that's huge. Now, everybody, go ahead and follow and subscribe if you like this program. If you like the kind of news that I'm doing, if you are a person that is part of the broader community and like to see it, please go ahead and smash that follow button. It does help us out. So yeah, so continuing on. We've talked about the infrastructure bill, we've talked about the debt ceiling. Now we're going to get into some of the also depressing news of the state of American politics. Now, this is an interesting thing coming out of, let's see. There's more here than I thought it was. Let me go up to the top. All right. The sad state of U.S. politics. From viral memes to partisan infighting and threats of partisan violence across the country, it's obvious our politics have become more toxic, and working towards bipartisanship solutions in policy has been replaced by constant attacks. The results of the schisms are obvious in public skirmishes between members of Congress and the near constant spin of negative interactions between Democrats and Republicans on social media. Highlighting just two of the most recent examples, in the past month on the Hill, we saw Republican Representative Paul Gosar tweet a Attack on Titan parody of him attacking President Biden and Democrat Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. And Representative Lauren Boebert publicly implied that Representative Ilhan Omar was a terrorist. In the video he tweeted, which we are not going to show, Gosar is basically, I don't remember the main guy's name. It starts with a J. But Gosar is playing the part of the main character in Attack on Titan, and he's taking on the Titans, which, if you are a nerd like me, you know what a lot of this is, but it's basically a giant that eats people, right? So that's what it is. And one of the things about this is that there's been a huge public outcry due to the implication that he wants to kill Senator Ocasio-Cortez and President Biden. So Gosar said in a statement that he doesn't expose violence or harm towards any member of Congress or Mr. Biden, going on to say that the video symbolizes the battle for the soul of America when Congress takes up the president's economic package, which he said includes immigration provisions he disagreed with. This video is truly symbolic of a portrayal of a fight over immigration policy, the congressman said in the statement. As a result of the video, Gosar was formally censured by the House and removed from committee assignments. Undaunted, Gosar responded to the censure by tweeting the image of himself. This image of himself. Let me get it. Let me get it up on screen. Oh, meme game is strong though. Meme game is strong. Let me go ahead and do this. I need to obviously get my Chrome Dome. Oh, meme game. The meme game is strong with this one though. I don't give a fuck, Gosar said. Gosar life. So, yeah, obviously. Yeah, okay. So Sham Glint make a good point. I'm going to read this on there, and I'm going to get rid of Gosar because fuck him. He's a fascist. Quote, Sam Glint saying, I'm not advocating for violence against anyone. It's just that the soul of the nation's at stake, and we are at war. What? Right. So for those that might not know, Attack on Titan is an allegory for racism. the protagonist of the show end up going full doomer mode. I'm not revealing anything out of here. Don't worry. Spoilers, kind of. Full doomer mode, wants to destroy everything and to like bring the people back from like the brink of war, like very mutual assured destruction kind of bullshit. But they're a stand-in for the Jews, and it's pretty fascist. And Gosar is a fascist. I mean, that's what this boils down to. The imagery is the idea that immigrants are illegally flooding over the border and invading the United States. That's the point that he's making, right? He's being extremely xenophobic and saying that the illegal immigrants are like the Titans and they're here to destroy everything and we must destroy them ourselves to protect our people, which is the entire point of the show. Like, and manga, if you wanted to read it instead. So I think the focus of this on the violent aspect misses the mark to a degree. And I need people to understand that. Like, if you're not a nerd and you haven't watched Attack on Titan, it is very much an allegory for Nazism, fascism. The protagonists are like stand-ins for Jewish people, and they're like, there's some tropes about them being like demons and shit. It's out there. It's very good. It's very well written, but it is out there with this. And the person that made this for Gosar more than likely knows that. Don't be fooled. All right. Now, continuing on. When the House censured Mr. Gosar, Representative Lauren Boebert was attempting to explain that it was hypocritical to strip Gosar of his committee assignments while Democrats' transgressions went unpunished. In doing so, she described Representative Ilhan Omar as, quote, the Jihad Squad member from Minnesota, who is, quote, allowed on the Foreign Affairs Committee while praising terrorists. Now, this didn't happen, right? So if I get canceled over this, right, if YouTube or Twitch or Facebook gets me canceled for reporting on the news, I'm going to be pissed. But I got to let you guys all know anyways. Can I zoom that? Oh, no, I can't zoom that. I just feel like I'm super big. Okay. Now in mid-November, Representative Boebert said the following on a campaign event. So the other night on the House floor was not my first time with Jihad Squad moment, Boebert told the crowd. I was getting into an elevator with one of my staffers and he and I were leaving the Capitol. We're going back to my office and we get in the elevator and I see a Capitol police officer running hurriedly towards the elevator. I see fret all over his face and he's reaching. The door is shutting. I can't open it. What's happening? I look to the left and there she is, Ilhan Omar. And I said, well, she doesn't have a backpack, so we should be fine. So here we are only had one floor to go. And I say, do I say it or do I not? And I look over and I say, look, the Jihad Squad decided to show up for work today. Don't worry. It's just her staffers on Twitter that talk for her. She's not tough in person. Over a public attack against Representative Omar resulted in multiple death threats and a truly disturbing voicemail. Thanks to the C-band video. Okay, so we're going to listen to this voicemail. Let's see. Let's go ahead and mute it. Should have had this up at first, but we're fine. We'll just go ahead and skip the ad. All right, so we're going to go ahead and listen to Ilhan Omar in her own words and in the words of the person that the video.
Here in the United States. I myself have reported hundreds of threats on my life, often triggered by Republican attacks on my faith. And this week, once again, we saw another increase. I'm going to play you a voicemail.
So we're just going to listen to this voicemail
that we received.
And after this voicemail, we'll
I got off the phone.
Get off the video.
With Representative Boebert after she posted her video.
We see you Muslims saying nigger bitch. We know.
Oh, that's Toss. Oh God. That's Toss. Nikki, next time you put a video up, please let me know. I forgot that it had that comment in there. Ah, God, I hope I don't get canceled.
That will love the opportunity to take you off the face of the fucking earth. Come get it, but you fucking Muslim piece of shit, you jihadist. We know what you are. You're a fucking traitor. You will not live much longer, bitch. I can almost guarantee you that. We the people are rising up, and you will be tried for a military tribunal.
We the people will be rising up with our racist hatred of a black woman that happens to be a Muslim. It's really, really a sad state of affairs that it is getting to this point. Okay, it's fucking ridiculous that the language that we have to address political differences has gotten to this point. Now, I've gotten into debates with people that are a little more sympathetic to average conservatives than maybe what is present on political Twitter. Or I should say not political Twitter. I should say Twitch political Twitter. And they try to tell me that what the left does on a regular basis is just as bad as that video you heard. Just as bad as that death threat. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not both siding this. Don't get me wrong, though. There are some people on the left that are shit. Absolutely dog shit when it comes to this kind of thing. But not like that. Not nearly like that. So don't let people tell you any differently. Liberals and the left, tankies beside, we don't do that shit. And if you see anybody doing anything like what you just heard in that video, please call them out. Tell them you don't accept that. Bigotry is bigotry. Don't let anybody do that shit. So, moving on from that story, there's also towns divided. Small towns everywhere. Now, even California. According to the LA Times, for Oroville's Vice Mayor Scott Thompson, the father of two young boys, Governor Gavin Newsom's mandate requiring school children to be vaccinated against COVID-19 was the final straw. He believed the government had no right to tell him what to put in his or his children's bodies. Many of his constituents agreed when it came to pandemic mandates, and so he came up with a grandiose, headline-grabbing nom de jour for his small Northern California city. Oroville declared itself a constitutional republic, which means nothing. A place where the local leaders pledge to fight mandates they say go too far. Any executive order issued by the state of California or the United States federal government that are overreaching or clearly violate our constitutionally protected rights will not be enforced by the city of Oroville against the citizens, read the declaration passed this month by the city council. Now, it should be noted here that vaccine mandates have been upheld by the U.S. Supreme Court as being a vested government interest in the protection of its citizens for the good health and well-being under the General Welfare Clause, specifically in many instances, and for the inherent powers of government for like 200, 300 years. Quarantining too. Pennsylvania had one during a yellow fever outbreak. So this notion that the government is overstepping its constitutional mandate is made up fiction from the last 40 years. It's something that is specifically come out due to concentrated efforts by AstroTurf groups trying to play on conservative sensibilities in order to get good money from citizens and expand their political reach because they have money and the like. So it should be especially noted that this is just bullshit. So there is that. Sounds like a sanctuary city. Yeah, no, good point, Sham. It does sound like a sanctuary city. And the right hates those. No, they don't. They just, it's really like the sanctuary city thing is like, they can't do that because it's against the law. Like, that's all it boils down to. And anything that's against, and not anything that's against the law, but anything that's against their law from a cultural standpoint they support is unconstitutional to them. It's really cultural. I've said this many, many times. A lot of people, the Raging Cajun, like to say it's the economy stupid. It's not. It's the culture stupid. Hate them, love them, don't care. Andrew Breitbart said that politics is downstream from culture, and he's right. He was right. God damn it, he was fucking right. Anyways, continuing on. Now, he also said the desire here is for dialogue. For some, the declaration was a stand for freedom, but others in the town saw it as a reckless tantrum amid a growing pandemic that has killed more than 73,000 Californians. Oroville's resident, Sheila Hirschman, lost her father, former San Francisco poet laureate Jack Hirschman, to COVID-19 3 months ago. She said the resolution insulted people who have lost loved ones or are immune compromised just to score political points. It says we're cowboys and we're not going to live by your rules, she said. I don't think it's about open dialogue at all. I feel it's a dangerous measure that they have no business adding to our charter. Oroville, a city of 20,000 people, is now one of the growing number of rural California communities in recent years to label itself a sanctuary or a place otherwise exempt from some liberal ideals. 2 years ago, the desert town of Needless became a sanctuary city for the Second Amendment in rebuke to California's strict gun laws. And in defiance of pandemic shutdown orders, the Central Valley towns of Atwater and Coalinga, last year declared themselves respectively a sanctuary city for business and a town where all businesses are essential, with both losing emergency COVID-19 funding in the process. Designed to benefit from the buzz of California's sanctuary designations used in the context of protecting undocumented immigrants, the labels reflect a tension between rural towns and the Newsom administration, and the left in general. Oroville's constitutional republic resolution is mostly symbolic, with no power over schools, which are regulated by the state. The town is the country seat of Butte County. Butte County, a purple county where 36% of the votes are registered Republicans and 35% are registered Democrats and 20 are independents. By close margin, the county voted for President Trump in 2016 and Biden last year. Voters have supported the attempted recall of Newsom. At an Oroville City Council meeting at which the Constitutional Republic resolution was approved, a city staffer had to clarify to one of the commenters that the resolution was not beginning the effort for Oroville to secede from California and from the Union. One speaker was an older man who compared the resolution to the decades-old State of Jefferson movement, which calls for California's rural conservative northern countries to secede, forming their own state. These constitutional republic people would probably prevent mask mandates, the man said, citing the country's vaccination rate. In other words, they're looking to kill people. The audience broke out into laughter. When the resolution passed, they cheered. Now that the mandates have gone from not just putting something on the outside of your body or modifying how you run your business, but now shoving something inside your body that nobody knows the long-term effects of, that's just like, okay, now you're, in my opinion, crossing the line, Thomas said. Thompson, the pastor of the Assembly of God Church, of course he's a fucking pastor, said that he is not anti-mask or opposed to the vaccine for people who want it. He said that he and his sons are not vaccinated, but they now have antibodies after a mild bout with COVID-19 in August. There are people out there who are like, this whole thing is a hoax, Thompson said. We're not like that, just being reckless. Yet they're not getting the vaccine. Not reckless, sure. You don't care about public health with those kind of statements. You fuckwit. I'm sorry, this really does piss me off. I fucking can't stand this kind of shit. And if you don't like me cursing, I'm sorry. I'm just gonna keep doing it. That's the kind of show we run here. Continuing on. He said that the unvaccinated city employees are tested weekly for COVID-19 at the city's expense, and his church has handed out hundreds of masks to congregants. City council members said that they have been inundated with calls and emails about the resolution, positive and negative, from across the country. There's been a lot of explicitives, said Eric Smith, a councilman and president of the Oroville Chamber of Commerce. Smith said most local business owners support the declaration. Of course they do, because they think people won't go to eat at a restaurant if they have to wear a mask or something. I don't know. It's all bizarre to me. He said the broad pandemic closures were a hard pill to swallow because they came amid what has been local fiscal renaissance and growing population in recent years. So yeah, that's where we at That's where we're at. Now, political research. Continuing on with these things. Political Magazine released the results of a study called the Partisan Trade-off Bias, when political polarization meets policy trade-offs. Most policies are rife with trade-offs. They have an intended outcome and some regrettable side effects. Our recent studies suggest that political polarization in the United States runs so deep that it leads partisans to see the other side's intended outcome as a ruse and the side effect as the real intention. Yeah, because everybody's a liar when you lie all the time. God, the projection is so bad. I hate it here. Please, I fucking hate it. All right. In other words, Democrats and Republicans not only disagree about policy matters, they believe the other party's agenda is intentionally designed to harm. We call the tendency the partisan trade-off bias, and it applies to both parties. To a Democrat, the purpose of an environmental policy that reduces carbon emissions, for example, is to preserve the environment, and a corresponding loss of coal mining jobs is an unfortunate side effect. However, according to Republicans, our research finds might look at the same policy and see a plot to eradicate jobs in the fossil fuel industry. Meanwhile, a Democrat might presume a Republican push to lower corporate tax rates is more about helping the wealthy and hurting the poor than fueling economic growth. Now, I mean, it sometimes is just about helping the wealthy, some of these. I don't think you can say the same thing about going after fossil industry. So I don't want to both side this. So I want to call that bit out. Now that's an example from the magazine. Okay. Now, I don't think it's about hurting poor people though. I do think it is just about helping the rich in those kind of circumstances. Now, some people will legitimately believe that it helps fuel the economic growth. There's not evidence that tax cuts fuel. There's evidence, let me correct myself. There's evidence that tax cuts fuel economic growth to a point. After that point, it is just increasing wealth inequality and income inequality, and thus the negative consequences of that. I call it the strain equilibrium to counter the equilibrium put out by, I can't remember the economist's name, that talked about the equilibrium between the right tax rate and the right spending rate. I don't remember what it's called. I'll look it up later and maybe do a show about it. But I call this strains equilibrium because I was the first person that I knew thought of it. I'm sure that there's economists out there that have talked about it before. Probably Stephanie Clinton, honestly. MMT, guys. Look it up. Now, I said that before MMT, before I knew about MMT, but that's neither here nor there. Now, let's continue on. Of course, skepticism about motives is sometimes warranted, but oftentimes is misguided. And the deeper it runs, the harder it is to get anything about through the policymaking process. Unless politicians find a way to lessen the effects of the partisan trade-off bias, we're likely to keep seeing stalemates on important policy issues. In a nutshell, our study showed that the negative side effect associated with different policy trade-offs are not interpreted by opponents as side effects at all, but as intended goals of the policy. To date, the political science literature has shown that political polarization leads partisans not only to dislike each other, but to see the other side increasingly as a threat to the country. Clearly seen by people that think that Republicans are trying to destroy people and basically just take out black people and prevent all immigration, stuff like that. Flip side, Republicans seeing Democrats as evil communists bent on destroying their way of life. We must fight him back. Go and punish her on him. The Laffer curve. Yes, thank you. You're smart. I want you on my program, Sham. Hit me up later. The Laffer curve. That is what it is. Yes. Laffer. Thank you. All right. The good news is that by identifying the partisan trade-off bias, our research points to a path forward. Policymakers who pay attention to this bias might be better equipped to achieve compromise. This means that rather than focusing only on the main goal of policy, they need to communicate clearly to the public what is intentional and what is a regrettable side effect of that goal. Now, they need to also say that the side effect is bad, and we are going to do things to mitigate the negative consequences of that side effect. For example, we increase free trade, we need to retrain people into jobs that pay just as much as the jobs that are being lost due to trade. If there's technology coming in to replace people in the factory, then we need to retrain those factory workers to either be the technological geniuses that create the technology that are replacing them, maintain the machines that are replacing them, etc., or at least get them into a role that is similar in pay and prestige. Remember, prestige is very important. A person has a lot built into the kind of job that they have. So if you tell a factory worker that they're going to have to work in service industry, might not be as much prestige to them. Even if they're making the same amount of money, they might feel that their social station has diminished. These are things that people need to remember. Now, continuing on. No interest, so I just learned things and never. I mean, that's fair. I am a wealth of knowledge because I like knowing things. So I hear you. Continuing on. Fortunately, our studies also suggest this might be achievable. What? The partisan trade-off bias happens not because people don't understand a given policy, but because they don't trust the policymakers who are pushing that policy. We find that the level of trust a person feels towards a policymaker proposing a policy is a crucial driver of the partisan trade-off bias. And when we were able to increase people's trust in the policymaker in our studies, we saw that the partisan trade-off bias decreases substantially. Existing research suggests that there are many ways politicians can earn others' trust, but one of the most powerful is also the simplest, making sure people feel that their voices are heard and listened to before a policy is announced, including both those inclined to like and dislike the policy. When we told participants in our study that a policymaker spoke with stakeholders from all sides of the political spectrum before rolling out a proposal, the partisan trade-off bias subsided. This is simple. Honestly, this is like simple how to win friends and influence people, basic stuff. This is, if you've ever, there's more of these books like Confidence Game. Like a lot of this stuff is basic social psychology. And you can see it happen in real time as people double down on something negative because you are just attacking them for the negative actions they had rather than addressing why they might have that negative feeling. If you say, hey, Wordy does this a lot. And Wordy, if you're watching this later, good on you for doing this. Wordy Talks, that is. We'll do a shout out for him later. But what it boils down to is you got to be like, hey, I hear you. You're saying X, Y, and Z. Is that correct? And they're like, yeah, sure. Or they can correct you and you just do a little back and forth, right? And then you can then pull them to your side, at least in the moment. Might not sit permanently, but you can pull them to your side and be like, look, I hear you. I don't like those things either. Let's work to fix them and fix this. That is more likely to get somebody on your side than just constantly attacking them, calling them dumb, evil, whatever. Again, this is something that both moderate Republicans and moderate Democrats need to do in order to reach compromise. Good compromise, not bad compromise. There's certain things that you should take a stand on. I don't know. If you're an open borders advocate, maybe that's your stand. Maybe you don't want to compromise with Republicans on that one. I don't care. But you get what I'm saying. So, continuing on. Giving people a voice in the process does not mean that they will change their minds about the value of the policy. Important note. But it does increase the chances that they will see the policy as a sincere attempt to solve problems rather than a form of hidden malice. That, in turn, can help lower the temperature and de-escalate the cycle of polarization. The same lessons hold for those of us who are not policymakers, but ordinary citizens who want to have better conversations about politics. As I was just saying. If you think you know what the other side's real intentions are, think again. What you see as malice might be an unintended side effect. And if you want someone to give you the benefit of doubt, put in the work of making them feel heard before you make yourself heard. So just that's what we ask here. That is what we're trying to do with Crowdsourced Politics, with the Crowdsourced Tribune, and any other projects you might see us on here. So that is what it boils down to. Gotta understand what your opponent is saying in order to rebut it in a way that actually challenges them. Yes, 100%. And the most obvious one about this that's happening right now is the left's pushback against the right's claims of CRT. I will do an episode about that. Not going to talk about her now, but I do think that a lot of people are missing the forest for the trees when they're arguing against this, and they're not being effective. a lot of people online. There's some people that are in the media. Trevor Noah, I think, does it pretty well when he talks to politicians about it from the other side. He got Dan Crenshaw to be like, oh, well, yeah, of course there's past racism that impacts today. If somebody else got Ben Shapiro to say that, you need to get everybody that you talk to say that so that they understand what you're saying. And, you know, when they're not partisan hacks like those two, because they are partisan hacks, when they're not partisan hacks like those two, then you might actually make some headway. More on the sad state of national politics go now, which are, we need to talk about the threats and violence that are happening across the country and the political spectrum. Going to continue. In a year that began with a deadly insurrection at the U.S. Capitol, lawmakers have seen a sharp rise in a number of threats against them. Republicans' muted response to Gosar's behavior has intensified fears about the possibility of more political violence in America in the months to come. Jackie Speer, the Democratic congresswoman who spearheaded the effort to censure Gosar, warned that Republicans' refusal to hold him accountable could have dangerous repercussions. If you are silent about a member of Congress wanting to murder another member of Congress, even in a cartoon, you are inciting violence, Speer told The Guardian. And if you incite violence, it begets violence. The cycle is already playing out in the halls of Congress. The U.S. Capitol Police reported earlier this year that the agency has seen a 107% increase in threats against members of Congress compared to 2020. And that was during COVID. Like the beginning of COVID. Think about that. The United States Capitol Police Chief, Tom Menger, has said he expects the total number of threats against members of Congress to surpass the 9,000 this year, compared to with 3,939 such threats in 2017, a threefold increase. Some of those threats have been on vivid display in the past month. In addition to Gosar's video, the 13 Republicans who voted in support of the bipartisan infrastructure bill earlier this month have received threatening messages as well. Representative Fred Upton of Michigan publicly shared one such message in which a man called the Republican congressman a fucking piece of shit traitor. I hope you die. Hope everybody in your fucking family dies, the man said in the message. Again, this is unconscionable. You shouldn't do this. Don't say, oh, well, he got hurt either. Like, come on. They're just words. No, they're not just words. They have consequences. You know that. I know that. Don't play games. And those kinds of threats are not reserved solely for members of Congress. Election workers and school board members also say they have received more violent messages. According to an April survey commissioned by the Brenner Center for Justice, nearly 1 in 3 election officials are concerned about their safety while on the job. A third. Jesus fucking Christ. Stephen Spalding, senior counsel at the government watchdog group Common Cause, describes such violent tactics as a core threat to our democracy. The threat of violence is really to intimidate people from doing their job and upholding their oath of office, Spalding said. When you start having these violent episodes enter the system, it is truly counter to the way we are supposed to engage in open and fair debate about policy issues in this country. Not only that, it is causing people to resign from their jobs. If you have good people resigning from their jobs due to bad people, only bad people will be politicians. Yeah, people aren't thinking about this. Continue on. There are already signs that fears over personal safety are pushing lawmakers out of office, like I just said. When the Republican Congressman Anthony Gonzalez announced in September that he would not seek re-election, he said the vote to impeach Trump for inciting the insurrection had affected the lives of his family members. Gonzalez told the New York Times that at one point earlier this year, ununiformed police officers had to escort him and his family through the Cleveland airport because of security concerns. That's one of those moments where you say, is this really what I want for my family when they travel? To have my wife and kids escorted through the airport? Gonzalez said. Even though threats are affecting their own caucus members, House Republicans rejected the opportunity to send a message by voting to censure Gosar. Instead, House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy attacked the censure resolution as a Democrat abuse of power, suggested he would award Gosar with better committee assignments whenever Republicans gain control of the chamber. It's all for political, cultural posturing here too. It's not the economy, it's the culture. And the culture needs to change. Quote, he's got a number of radical extremists in his caucus that are very effective communicators to the right fringe, and he can't really rein them in because reining them in means they will attack him, Speer said. You might as well put a brass ring in Kevin McCarthy's nose because they're pulling him around by it. Dr. Joanne Freeman, a Yale history professor and author of The Field of Blood, Violence in Congress and the Road to the Civil War, warned that McCarthy's response to Gosar's behavior may encourage similar incidents in the future. Quote, he's going to be rewarded for it in some way, and because of that, there will be others that follow in that mold. It's a moment that shows how far party is above government and above institutions of government and above institutional stability. While acknowledging the possibility of future violence within Congress, Freeman added that Gosar's incident could also provide an opportunity for a course correction in political discourse. We're in a moment of extreme contingency, and indeed things might become much worse, Freeman said. But during that kind of moment of extreme contingency, where anything can happen, those are the moments where it is possible to make positive change. For Speer, Gosar's behavior served as a reminder of how far some of her colleagues have strayed from their duties to their constituents. The California congresswoman who announced her retirement last week urged fellow members to focus on advocating policies rather than spewing violent rhetoric to raise money and rack up retreats. Again, this is like, all right, I'm just going to riff for a second here. I hate to say this, okay? There is, oh no, I accidentally pushed the button. Oh no. Gotta deactivate that. All right. Am I still good? I'm still good. Okay. Sorry, I pushed a macro button on my computer. So I'm gonna riff for a second here. When you are in a prisoner's dilemma, which is what we're kind of in, there's no reason for either side to give an inch about anything because they're being rewarded by it. And the first one that gives an inch is going to be taken advantage of. In order to get out of it, there is a strategy that actually works. And it's one that Democrats aren't really playing. It can be a dangerous strategy with how polarized the country is, but it's one that is shown to work. And it's called tit for tat, followed by rapprochement. Now, this is a famous war game that was conducted in, I want to say, the 80s using nascent data science technology to run through thousands of different simulations in order to figure out how people might react to constant attacks on the geopolitical stage. And what they found, running millions of scenarios, is that you do tit for tat. So you get punched in the nose, you punch them in the nose back. Do that a couple of times. And then one party offers an olive branch. And they're like, look, I'm done. You basically say, look, I'm done playing this game. Let's try to work on something we both agree with. What do you say? And what generally happens is that a compromise is reached eventually, because the first person to offer that olive branch is rewarded by some of the people involved. Doesn't mean that it actually works right then and there. You might get hit again, and then you do tit for tat a couple more times. But eventually, then offer another olive branch. But eventually, you end up winning out more in the long run. Now, the reason why I said it's somewhat dangerous doing this when we're this polarized is because you don't know when you're going to light that tinderbox. And there's been some of this rapprochement being done kind of by Biden, but not really. And so you need to be cautious with doing the tit for tat. But it does work often. And I'm gonna look for NPR Planet Money. Nice game. Tit for tat strategy. Yep. So it's a 16-minute NPR Planet Money program. I just dropped the link. Should propagate soon. Should see that link. Listen to that, or read the transcript and understand why this works. That's why I ask for you for this whole thing. and also try to understand where the other side is actually coming from, so you actually can argue against what they're actually saying and bring them over your side by giving them the due listening that people want more often than not. All right. So if you're just joining the News Roundup, hi, welcome again, everybody. I am Cypher. I am the host and moderator of the Crowdsourced Politics podcast, which this Crowdsourced Politics News Roundup is part of. We do this every Thursday from 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to roughly 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, providing the news that was for the last week, the kind of analysis only the crowd can provide. Now, this happens, like I said, every Thursday except during holidays, so don't expect it during Christmas week. But this is something that we do, and we're going to be opening up another show to get the crowdsourcing fun stuff in. So if you're interested in joining on that program, go ahead and hit me up on Twitter. Link to come now. Hit me up on Twitter and hit me up on the Facebook or Discord. Actually, we'll do Discord and then the Facebook page. So go ahead and check out these links here. I'm going to go ahead and yeah. So go ahead and check out those links that I just dropped for you. That's the easiest way to get a hold of me is any of those places. And we can get you on the program. Kind of the stuff that we do with the program is that we have different conversations and debates about different topics. Our last Crowdsourced Politics episode was on police reform, refund or defund the police. Refunding the police is what some people have been doing over the last 8 months or so. And defund the police, we all know what that is. And so which actually works to reduce crime and increase citizen engagement and rapprochement with police officers. And so we talked a lot about that for about an hour with some interesting people. And so go ahead and check that out wherever you get your podcast. And I'll drop the link of the Spotify for that here shortly. Or YouTube. It is on YouTube, so you can also get it on YouTube. But here is the audio version of the podcast from Spotify. We like Spotify because when I upload it to our podcast host, Spotify gets it within like 10 minutes. It's the only reason we really promote Spotify. They have a good publish time on it, but you can get it on iTunes, Amazon, you can get it for Google, you can get it wherever. So go ahead and check it out wherever you get your podcast. We also do another podcast called Cypher State, which is foreign affairs and foreign policy focused podcast, where we take a pretty in-depth look at a particular topic impacting the geopolitical stage. Our last episode was Taliban Land, where you can get on our YouTube channel, which link should be coming here shortly. If you're not watching it on YouTube, go ahead and check out the YouTube channel. So, and as always, let's go ahead and please smash the like button for the algorithms and follow and subscribe. Oh, wait, is it paused? There we go. Oh, thank you. Have I got my booster shot yet? No, because I'm not due for the booster shot until next month. So I will be getting it next month once I'm due for it, because you're supposed to wait 6 months unless you're in an at-risk category in which you can get it sooner. And if you are so inclined, go ahead and why isn't it not showing up? I don't know why. There he goes. Go ahead and smash that subscribe button or follow button as well. So yeah, appreciate it. It does help us out. All right, continuing on. I got about 30 minutes, so we're good. So let's talk about what is going on with the January 6th investigations. So as you know, if you paid attention to this program or news in general, January 6th is still being investigated. Congressional committees are issuing subpoenas and the like. So recently, the House Select Committee has interviewed or deposed hundreds of people involved in the January 6th insurrection at the Capitol, including many officials from the previous administration and defendants who have entered guilty pleas. Here's the update. CNBC News reports. The House panel investigating the deadly invasion of the U.S. Capitol aims to hold lengthy public hearings next year, dealing in vivid color the events of January 6th, both at the Capitol and in the former President Trump's White House. Representative Liz Cheney, Republican from Wyoming, said on Thursday. Cheney, The vice chair of the select committee and one of its 2 Republican members said that the panel aims to conduct multiple weeks of public hearings sometime in 2022, a year of crucial midterm elections where the GOP hopes to retake majority control of at least one chamber of Congress. Those hearings will lay out exactly what happened every minute of the day on January 6th here at the Capitol and at the White House and what led to the violent attack, Cheney said in a House Rules Committee hearing. Cheney revealed that the plans less than a day after the Select Committee voted to advance contempt proceedings for former Justice Department official Jeffrey Clark over his alleged defiance of subpoenas for documents and testimony. The investigation on Wednesday evening unanimously voted for a report recommending the House hold Clark in contempt. Rules Committee Chairman Jim McGovern, Democrat from Massachusetts, said Thursday morning that his panel would not yet rule on the report because Clark was being given another chance to appear before the investigators on Saturday. Clark is the second Trump associate to be accused of contempt of Congress for refusing to comply with the committee's subpoena. The first, former White House senior advisor Steve Bannon, was held in contempt by the House and subsequently indicted on 2 criminal counts by a federal grand jury. He has pled not guilty. One of the officials who is cooperating with the committee is Trump's previous chief of staff, Mark Meadows. And we will be getting into some of the things he said and revealed this week here in a second. I need water. I'm sorry. Thirsty. Okay. All right. Mr. Meadows has been engaging with the Select Committee through his attorney. Chairperson Benny Thompson said in a statement, he has produced records to the committee and will soon appear for an initial deposition. Meadows is the highest profile member of the Trump inner circle who is known to be cooperating or who the committee has publicly acknowledged is cooperating. Committee members have previously said many people with connections to the events of that day have voluntarily engaged with investigators, but they have not specified who those individuals are or how high up they were in the Trump administration. The committee will continue to assess his degree of compliance with our subpoena after the deposition, Thompson concluded. Details of the deals Meadows struck with the committee were not yet made public. While Meadows has produced records for the committee and will sit before it, he could still try to claim executive privilege to protect certain pieces of information, making the cooperation fragile. In a statement, Meadows' lawyer, George Terlingle III, told the Washington Post that Meadows and his team continue to work with the Select Committee and its staff to see if we can reach an accommodation that does not require Mr. Meadows to waive executive privilege or forfeit the long-standing position that senior White House aides cannot be compelled to testify before Congress. And the reason that this is the case is because they are hoping that it won't be public, but you can still release the information and that can be released and blah, 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 blah. Right? Now, continuing on. Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger was interviewed also this week. Raffensperger spoke with the House Select Committee investigating January 6th Capitol Hill riot for roughly 4 hours on Tuesday, according to his office and an aide working for the House panel. Quote, I spoke to the January 6th committee to ensure they included the full record of how stolen elections claims damage our democracy, whether in 2016, 2018, or 2020, Raffensperger, a Republican and Georgia top election official, said in a statement to CNN. While liberals in Washington, D.C. remain focused on Trump, conservatives should focus on the kitchen table issues that really matter to the American people, he said. Raffensperger told CNN in August that he would talk to the committee if asked to do so. During a now infamous phone call in January, then President Donald Trump pressed Raffensperger to find more than 11,000 votes needed to overturn the results showing Joe Biden had won the state. Raffensperger refused. The call and the White House efforts to pressure Raffensperger and Georgia officials to overturn the election have emerged as a significant area of interest to the House Select Committee. CNN previously reported that criminal investigators in the state have been quietly conducting interviews, collecting documents, and working to build a line of communication with the congressional investigations as they aim to build a case against Trump for his alleged attempts to overturn the state's 2020 election results. Another key area of focus in the probe has been the Georgia Secretary of State's office, after Trump called the officials there following the 2020 election and pressed them to help investigate his allegations of fraud. Democratic Democratic Representative Benny Thompson of Mississippi, who chairs the committee, told reporters after the panel's call with Raffensperger that the Georgia Secretary of State had talked about how, quote, his family has suffered because of his truthfulness. He said he could find no irregularity or illegality in the election, Thompson added. When asked specifically if the panel had discussed the lead up to January 6th, Thompson did not want to reveal the details of the interview, but said, quote, there are some things that have come out. Now, the reason why the January 6th election commission is important is because, as everybody knows, it was pretty much an attack on democracy itself. And a lot of the people that were at the Capitol thought they were doing the quote unquote right thing. There's a video circulating out there right now of a man being interrogated, very weakly interrogated, more like, come on, man, I know that's what you wanted, right? Like being very friendly cop interrogated and revealing that he thought he was going to do the right thing. And he cried and broke down, didn't realize why he did what he did, because that's how mob mentality works. And that was what a lot of the people that were trying to instigate violence at the Capitol were hoping for. That is also partly why there's been conspiracy theories on the right that said it was all a ruse by the federal government. But the federal government at the time was controlled by Trump and Republicans. And Republicans were warned about possible violence that were allies of Trump prior to the insurrection. So the conspiracy theory is just bullshit. And we're going to end up getting to the bottom of it, but it could take a year or two longer. And as we get more information, stay tuned to this program, and we'll keep you informed about that. Now, passing up against the news today is another very important topic with all of the arguments that the Supreme Court of the United States is hearing in regards to Roe v. Wade, Casey Anthony, etc. So we're going to get into this. The SCOTUS heard oral arguments in the case of Mississippi versus Jackson Women's Health this week. The question from the justices and the remarks from the lawyers were spirited at times in the 90-minute session. Media headlines in the wake of the hearings appear to indicate the SCOTUS will either change the viability threshold to meet the 15-week standard in the Mississippi law, or even overturn Roe v. Wade and Planned Parenthood versus Casey. A conservative Supreme Court, built up significantly by former President Donald Trump, is considering whether a 15-week ban on most abortions in Mississippi should be upheld. If the law or some of it is upheld, abortion could quickly become illegal in as much as half of the country. The justices are expected to rule sometime this summer, but the oral arguments usually provide some clues about how the justices view the case. Here are some of the 4 key takeaways from the hearings. 1. That the court even agreed to hear this ban. Lower courts have quickly knocked it down, as they have other state laws attempting to ban abortion at so early in pregnancy, suggesting that the justices were willing to intervene in curtailing the right to abortion in America. The court usually only takes cases when there is a conflict in lower courts, and lower courts have all agreed that Mississippi's 15-week ban is unconstitutional. There is no federal law protecting abortion rights. It's up to the states to govern abortions, but for now they have to do so guided by the Supreme Court's protections to allow it up to halfway through the pregnancy. Mississippi bans abortions months before the current standard set by the night. Hold on a second. Sorry, my dogs are barking. The court usually only takes up cases. Continuing on. Mississippi bans abortions months before the current standard set by the 1973 Roe v. Wade case, where the Supreme Court said abortions should be available until a fetus is viable to live outside the womb. That's currently understood to be around 24 weeks. Mississippi is effectively asking the court to nix the 50-year legal precedent, plus another legal precedent from 1992 in Planned Parenthood versus Casey, where the court said states can't impose an undue burden on the ability of women to seek an abortion. These legal precedents, said Mississippi Attorney General Scott Stewart, haunt our country, using strong language in opening arguments. Nowhere else does the court recognize a right to end human life. It's the most aggressive anti-abortion arguments before the court in years. The reason, and they made this case that basically is like, they basically made a religious argument about when life begins, for that matter, and they're trying to do it from this way. It's pure philosophical. There's not legal reasons for this necessarily, but they're trying to couch it in legal reasons. We at Crowdsourced Politics are trying to read tea leaves, but at least 4 justices seemed open to making such ground-shifting ruling on abortion. Justice Clarence Thomas was the first out the gate with questions evaluating the right's legal argument. Justice Samuel Alito and Brett Kavanaugh and Amy Coney Barrett all asked softball questions to Mississippi. The court only needs 5 votes to radically change the abortion rights. If those 4 sided with Mississippi, it would be 1 vote from winning. Justice Clarence Thomas elevated the right's legal argument, not evaluating. Misread that correction. The court could decide on a middle ground to allow abortion bans earlier. Anything short of the court striking down the law in full would be a loss for abortion rights supporters. Letting this law stand would have profound damage to women's liberty, equality, and the rule of law, argued Julie Rickelman of the Center for Reproductive Rights, an abortion rights group behind the lawsuit. She framed this as a fundamental freedom question. Abortion has been critical for women's equality participation in society. It does seem like there's an option for a compromise, as sad as that is. To let Roe v. Wade stand, protecting a woman's right to abortion, but to allow states to ban abortion earlier, perhaps months before the current standard or when a fetus is deemed viable to live outside the womb. Quote, why would 15 weeks be an appropriate line? Asked Chief Justice John Roberts. But coming to any kind of compromise would be a sea change for abortion rights in America. The right to abortion before 24 weeks, argued liberal Justice Elena Kagan, is part of the fabric of women's existence in this country. If the justices allow some or all of the 15-week ban to stand, that could be reality in much of half the country who have time bomb laws set up to, as soon as the court reduces the viability standard or whatever, to go into effect. It's coming, right? If this happens, it's going to be like overnight. Like it's going to become 36. I think it's 24 states or something have some of these laws where they're like, if the Supreme Court lowers the viability standard, we put in bans. Like that's what it boils down to. Now, the court is also aware of the political pressure on it. Public polls show that the Supreme Court is increasingly unpopular, as Americans come to view it less as an independent third branch of government and more as an extension of the ongoing political battles between Republicans and Democrats, because it's getting there. This isn't in people's heads. A lot of this stuff is like, now there's going to be some things where justices agree on like some sort of standard thing, but a lot of the cultural stuff is not set in stone and are going to be culturally predicated on their rulings. Liberal justices argued vehemently that if the court were to change abortion protections, it would erode public confidence in it even more, perhaps fatally so. They're not wrong. Justice Sonia Sotomayor pointed that the Mississippi State Senate leader said legislatures passed an unconstitutional ban specifically because the court was now more conservative, with 3 new justices put on it by Trump, who said he wanted to appoint people hostile to abortion rights. Quote, will this institution survive the stretch this creates, the stench this creates in the public perception that the Constitution and its readings are just political acts? She asked, if people believe this is all politics, how will we survive? How will the court survive? It probably won't. Like, it will get fundamentally changed, either through process or extrajudicial process, essentially. If the court overrules such entrenched legal precedent, known in legal terms as stare decisis, said Justice Stephen Breyer, people are going to be ready to say, no, you're just political, you're just politicians. Because they're almost there anyways. Because they kind of are. The ruling will probably come at a political important moment. We may not know what the justices think about this case and legal procedure question on a 6-week abortion ban in Texas until next summer. That is just a few months before the congressional midterm election. Results are mixed about how Supreme Court battles motivate each side's base, but there's a real question on whether Republicans, having achieved a decades sought-after goal, could in fact be the dog that catches the car on abortion, writes the Fix Aaron Blake, who looked at public polling and asked whether it's the left that will suddenly be motivated in elections if abortion rights are taken away. If the court upholds part of either law, expect abortion rights to topple across the nation. At least a dozen states have trigger laws, time bomb laws, like I said, that could automatically end most abortions, while some liberal states have laws in place that would protect such rights. At the congressional level, House Democrats voted to protect women's rights under federal law this fall, but Republicans in the Senate would never let that through. It would take a Democrats keeping their tenuous hold on power in Congress and agreeing to get rid of the filibuster to reinstate abortion rights nationally. It's whatever your opinion is about the morality of abortion, you should not like what this is doing to the country. You should not like what this is doing to the courts, whatever your opinion about the existence of the Supreme Court is, because it increases partisanship. So even if you are against abortion, you think that it's wrong and it's immoral and illegal, you shouldn't want this to happen through the courts. You should want this to happen through the legislature, through a constitutional amendment, or something else. So, no, I don't think this is a good thing, and I think that we're all going to be worse off because of it, regardless of how the court rules, honestly. Because if the court rules to overturn Mississippi's law, it will still look as partisan as it is to that side of the political spectrum, and they're just going to be emboldened to do things sneakier to overrule the courts. They might end up being the ones to stack the court in order to get rid of abortion. That's how bad this is. So, with that, we are done with the SCOTUS update. So let's go on to the economy. While the economy continues to look strong, the new COVID variant, Omicron, is causing some concern. Looking first at the labor market, US News Reports states that the labor market on Friday will report the numbers of jobs created in November in what will be the last reading of this important economic measure in 2021. By all accounts, it should be a good number, with estimates above October's 531,000 jobs. On Thursday, the department reported that unemployment claims were 222,000 last week, while the 4-week moving average of 238,750 was at the lowest since March of 2020. A day earlier, private payroll from ADP's monthly survey showed 534,000 jobs have been created in November. Continuing claims, meanwhile, fell by another 107,000 and are now below 2 million for the first time since the beginning of the coronavirus pandemic. The improving jobs picture comes amid an extremely tight market for labor, with more open positions above 10 million and the number of available workers around 2 million short of that number. Meanwhile, a record number of people have been quitting their jobs as a sign of confidence that they can find new ones. Overall, the economy is strengthening following a brief late summer swoon, with expectations for gross domestic product to increase by 5% or more annually or more for 2021. That would be the best performance since the early 1980s. The job market is likely to remain tight in 2022 and beyond, absent a downturn in the economy. Retirements of baby boomers, a declining birth rate, and restrictive immigration policies have left the labor market with fewer workers than are needed. And while Kate Barn, a director of labor market policy and interim chief economist at the Washington Center for Equitable Growth, lauds the improvement, she cautions that the economy still has some inequalities that disproportionately hinder women and minorities in the labor market. Quote, "I do think it is great how quickly it's bounced back," Barr said, "but we do have this underlying inequality that is evident in the month-to-month data." Now, the COVID outlook is making some waves. CNBC News reports that CEOs across the economy were optimistic in their 2022 outlook before the Omicron variant of COVID emerged, Are they still now? A recent survey from the Business Roundtable revealed confidence about the outlook into next year, but that was conducted before the first case of Omicron was reported. On Wednesday, as the first Omicron case in the United States was revealed in California, a second case from a Minnesota resident who recently traveled to New York City was revealed on Thursday. CNBC News contributor Susie Welch led a CNBC Leadership Exchange virtual roundtable with CEOs across the various sectors of the economy to gauge their confidence now as COVID dominates the market. The message from CEOs expect volatility to rule until again in 2022. Almost a year, we're all saying goodbye to 2020, like good riddance, Welch said. The sort of the year ahead was going to give us back our visibility into the future, give us back some kind of feeling that the earth was not moving from under our feet at every moment. And of course, it just didn't happen. So you sort of get to a place where you think, what else can go wrong? Or what can I know anymore? Shane Grant, Dano North American CEO, said he is, quote, very bullish going into 2022 on the core business, but does expect volatility to be a major theme. As we go into 2022, I think it is this theme of just volatility, and it's not one particular type of volatility. It's enormous volatility in our supply chain. It's everything from the input availability, capacity, transportation, labor. It's COVID adaptations by ways of working adaptations. It's the accordion economy of stop and go and the adaptations that are required therein. The theme going forward is just volatility in everything, Welch continued. Many leaders, including Welch, had been hopeful of an end to COVID in 2022. Quote, I think we all have employees and family members who say, when's this going to end? And it used to be that there were answers to that, like it's going to end, it's going to be the end of summer of 2021, she said. But COVID is not going to end at any point in 2022, Mr. Mauro Hernandez, CEO of Cano Health, a healthcare service provider for seniors. No, sorry, it's not going to end in 2022. Because it's so transmissible, because it continues to vary. He said that looking at the levels of vaccinations across industrialized nations and increasingly across the globe, and is still seeing the staggering caseloads, leads him to the downbeat conclusion. Now, these are things that people are very concerned about. They're right to be concerned. You can be concerned, but don't be fearful. Right now, there isn't any indication that Omicron is more deadly than Delta or more deadly than the original COVID variant. There's some budding look at it being more resistant to the vaccine or to antibodies, but that isn't 100% known yet. I think what's happening with Pfizer, Moderna, and J&J is that they're cautioning people to expect that so they don't get walloped by the news if it does happen. But to be frank, given what we know about Delta, what we know about this new coronavirus variant, and the efficacy of vaccines, just get vaccinated and get your booster shot when it's appropriate. And I think you should be pretty okay. Basically, this is the basics of it. Just get the vaccine, get the booster if you can. Medical exemptions, of course, exist, but get it if you can, and you should be fine. I'm not terribly concerned about it. I think that these concerns about it not ending in 2022, or at least people caring enough about the variant to warrant an economic slowdown in 2022, or these fits and stops that have been discussed so far, I don't know. I don't think that's going to happen. So stay optimistic about it, but do be precautious. Get your vaccine, get the booster. Continuing on. We understand lots about the virus, but it's a lot more like flu and hepatitis and measles and some others than it is like smallpox that we can simply eradicate from the earth, which is true. It's adapting, it's evolving. It's not like there's vaccines for these, but they're not 100% effective. So it's more likely to stay with us like the flu. But I think the vaccines gives us the ability to continue to live life more or less normally, or into quote unquote a new normal where as sad as it is to say, more people die from a virus, but I don't think it's going to have this dramatic impact on the economy that we saw in 2020. So yeah, I think that's what we can say about the economy and what we can say about COVID. So if this is the first time you've joined the News Roundup, we like to do a little thing to wrap up the program called News of the Weird, where we just find a cool, interesting story about something that we find interesting, funny, what have you, and talk about it with y'all. And today's story is going to be about a possum rescue in Australia. So let's do this. Gotta get the video, skip the ad. Okay. So do that. So, in weird but heartwarming story, a Queensland, Australia motorcycle officer was led to an injured bird by a possum. What? The possum then disappeared, only to reappear moments later, clinging to his motorbike dashboard. It's a very cute little video, and we're going to watch it. Oh, wait. Dude, is inflation real? We need to inflation. Okay, so I just saw this comment. I don't know when it came in. It could have came in late. Don't know why. Inflation is transitory. Once the supply chain returns to normal and the production of gas and fossil fuels in general goes back to where it was before the pandemic, you're going to see gas prices drop and the other prices drop. And as people re-enter the workforce, and well, there might be a little bit more inflation because of labor shortages and people being spent more money and people not wanting to dip into profits. But I don't think it's going to be 6% next year. Probably be like 3%, maybe a little higher than a 2% average that the Fed likes to keep, but that's nothing, honestly. All right, continuing on with this possum story because it's cute. So we're going to watch it. I think it's Alt F3. There we go. Oh, wait, is this muted? No, it's not muted. Okay, there's no sound. Look at this.
Come on, bud.
Oh, there he is.
Going?
Oh no, look at the possum. Look at it. Look at it, it's leading the officer.
Oh, no.
Look at the injured bird. Oh no. Poor bird.
Where are we going to put you, little mate?
Aw. Gonna skip it a little bit. What? Where is it? Where's the possum?
Along that line.
There you are.
Orange and red.
Look at it. It's right there.
Bud? All right, bud. Let's get you off the road, hey?
Aw, ain't that cute? Now, the reason that we wanted to share this news story with you isn't just because it was cute, but because it shows that altruism is a thing shared across species, across the planet, and it is one of those things that we all need to keep in mind with this and be altruistic to one another, help each other in a time of need. If a bird, a possum, an other animal can do it, you can too. And so, with that, I am sad to say we're out of time. XZs, thank you for following us. Sadly, we are calling it a close. So we do this typically 2 hours and we're at time. So it is what it is. So thank you everyone for joining on our journey through the news of the last week or so. This has been great. And without you, this would be just me shouting into the void that is the internet with no fun. There's no fun in that, right? So thank you all for joining us. The roundup happens every Thursday from 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to roughly about 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So go ahead and follow us every Thursday on that. And again, why don't you go ahead and let's restart that. There we go. Why isn't this working? I went through the effort to make these stupid things. There we go. Go ahead and smash that follower button and the subscribe button. It really does help us out. Like, comment, and subscribe, everybody. It's great. If you like this program, you'll like our other shows too. What we're doing is we like to do Cypher State. Cypher State is a foreign affairs, foreign policy podcast that happens on the third Sunday of every month. This month It might happen on the 18th rather than the 19th, simply because we're doing a charity stream at that time. And we're going to go into the holidays on that week. And I want to be able to make sure that people can experience the Cypher State live and give me enough time to edit it before the holiday season. And the other kind of podcast we like to do this, Cypher State, and the actual Crowdsourced Politics podcast. The most recent episode was Defund or Refund the Police. You can find that on your podcast streaming service or YouTube if you prefer video. The podcast streaming service, the audio is a little cleaned up, but it's essentially the same thing. Just if you prefer audio, go to a podcast wherever you get your podcast at, or go to YouTube and listen and watch it on YouTube. Join the Discord. Discord is where we're trying to build our community. We're trying to get things happening on the Discord. It's a good time. We're going to be having contests next year on Discord. We already had a contest where we gave away a pinatagram for the funniest memes that people gave us, voted on by our community on Facebook. And we're going to do these things kind of on Discord, maybe Twitter. And with that, go ahead and follow us on Twitter at Crowdsourced Poll on Twitter, where you can find memes and whatever the hell else I feel like pontificating on. So yeah. And if you don't know, Crowdsourced Politics is part of the Crowdsourced Tribune, a registered not-for-profit in the state of Texas that is designed to tamp down on vitriol and allow people to get into spirited debates without the drama that is typical of political debate. And if you want to participate with the nonprofit, the easiest way to do that is by following the Facebook page. We will have a website up soon, hopefully, knock on wood. Hopefully into next year, we'll have a website up. But we also do a writers guild where we'll be publishing people's works that are political, social, linked onto our website and helping people get published in general as well. If you know what a writers guild is, that's what we're trying to do. Just trying to do it with a little bit of a political angle on it. And we also run a Facebook group, which you can find at Tribune Facebook /groups/Tribune Comments. And like we always say at Crowdsourced let me see who, before I sign off, let me see who is live right now so we can go raid them on Twitch. We're gonna raid Joel Lewis. Joel Lewis is good people. So we're gonna go ahead and raid him. And yeah, it'll be good times. So raid Joel Lewis. So if you want to stick around and watch a good dude talk about different politics stuff, then yeah, go ahead and follow the raid into the Joe Lewis's podcast. And as always, like we said at Crowdsourced Politics, keep your head up through the political storm.
Crowdsourced Politics, throw that ass back 3 times. We're taking a look at some mom content. Some moms in Texas are pretty upset about some books.